Good morning, Vietnam! Sup, everyone. Welcome back to TENGRIDOME. This one is going to be a bit later in the week than usual. Obviously, I'm going to talk about Font versus Aldo and Horiguchi versus Pettis, but I intended to record this straight away, right after the event happened, but I went on a drinking binge. and then I wasted my time by rewatching 90s DC cartoons, which hold up beautifully, by the way. They've aged so well. Excellent storytelling, great animation, still looks great. So, if you don't know what to do with your free time, then just, I guess now you have my recommendation. But as to the fights, what can you say? There's weirdly not a lot happened in those fights, in terms of stuff you can actually break down sequence by sequence. I mean, I guess you could if you tried, but I don't think it's the focus we should have for this episode. It's not exactly as interesting as some of the conceptual stuff that made itself evident during the course of those fights. And normally I would start with Aldo versus Font, because that's what's on the tip of everyone's tongue. But I think Horiguchi versus Pettis would take a bit less time to break down, and I kind of want to go in a chronological sequence, in a chronological pattern, because it would be easier for me to actually formulate my thoughts. These thoughts, they've been stewing in their own juices for the last several days, and it's not exactly like I should have been writing them down, is what I'm saying. It's a problem I have. Whenever I think that I have lots of shit to say on the subject, I kind of never write anything down, and when I sit down and go, oh yeah, now's the time to actually formulate everything that's in my brain right now, I actually struggle to to do that. But yeah, all right. I do have some semblance of notes though, however, so let me take a look at it, refresh my memory a bit. So yeah, the fight itself, fairly entertaining affair. It's bantamweight. It's a bantamweight title fight. Even if it happens outside the UFC, it's still going to be interesting and fun. Because bantamweight is the best division in MMA today. I mean, that's just how it is. The amount of talent that we have there, it's frankly, it's absurd. And I mean, I know the knee-jerk reaction of many people would be to go, no, lightweight is the best division in MMA. Historically, yes, it kind of is, but in terms of the amount of big, bombastic events happening around several really big figures in the division. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Khabib, Dustin, Eddie Alvarez, etc., etc., etc. It was big, it was interesting, it was violent, it was great. But the problem with lightweight is that, we've always talked about how lightweight is kind of how Khabib was able to dominate lightweight because of its meta, and its meta is just not wrestling heavy. It just doesn't have a lot of defensively sound wrestlers or grapplers, and that's why Khabib sort of circumnavigated all the difficult matchups and just steamrolled everyone, which is also very interesting and great, and a very intelligent thing to do, and took a great degree of skill. However, if you look at bantamweight, have you ever looked at a bantamweight fight and noticed any large deficiencies in anyone, huge gaps in skill? okay, sure, someone might be a bit of a worse grappler than another fighter. Someone might have worse defensive wrestling, but it's never. They never look like that they're lost there. They never look like. Uh, uh, I struggle to remember any bantamweights looking as lost as Dustin Poirier or Justin Gaethje looked against Khabib, which is just a point in favor of bantamweight. And anyway, the fight itself, yeah, Horiguchi clearly had the athletic edge, clearly much faster, much more explosive, more powerful, stronger as well, like physically stronger, like has never had any trouble wrestling Pettis to the ground and then trying to like let loose with ground and pound. But I mean, it's not exactly Horiguchi's A game, so naturally Pettis was able to defend himself well, get up, and then find his spots. And throughout the fight, everyone talks about the fight like it's a fluke. And it's like a meme knockout. The more boring of the Pettis brothers has been imbued with the power of his mimetic brother, and now he was able to snatch away his knockout, his meme knockout finish. Finally, his first meme knockout finish against a good opponent. But nah, not what happened. If you go back and watch the fight, like throughout the fight, in spots, Pettis was still able to find connections in the pocket in boxing exchanges. Whenever they went past like the first layer, and it's kind of like the whole style of the Kyoji style is like the whole karate boxing thing. It's kind of it has a drawback in that it allows you to make big bursting movements, and it allows you to explode and like barge into range and then connect with like the first strike. The problem then is stopping your momentum, which Horiguchi and someone like Whittaker do by planting their feet at an angle. It's kind of like it's a kind of an awkward motion, and kind of forces them to take this split second to recover. And I've recently been recording like instructionals on boxing fundamentals for patrons, and once I've they're going to be published on Patreon, but there I talked about the subject of stances and moving within stance, and I brought up the contrast between boxing movement and karate boxing movement, like as you see it in MMA. Like with boxing. If you're a boxing heavy fighter, what you would normally do, and what would be like in any boxing gym, it would be presented to you as the correct way to move. And the way you move is like you're like treading water. You're like tiptoeing around your opponent, taking very, very small steps. And I've talked about this on multiple episodes, and I've talked about how Petr Yan moves around the cage, how Terence Crawford moves around in the ring, and they took teeny tiny little steps to reposition and gain an angle on their opponent. And with the way Horiguchi moves, like sure, it plays to his strengths in that he's a powerful, explosive puncher, and so whenever he barges into range, like does this big explosive lunge, and off the karate bounce. It gives him even more power. It allows him to eat away like this enormous chunk of space and just explode into you and catch you off guard, catch you unawares. But if you don't go out afterwards, if you don't go like backpedaling afterwards, if you don't go, oh fuck, and run away, giving Horiguchi the space back and the time necessary for him to recover from that lunge, you can do like Pettis does, take a couple small steps, reposition, and throw like an uppercut left hook counter, or just a left hook counter, maybe like a right hand, whatever. Any counter will work. Obviously, the left hook would be the more powerful one, the most potent one. The uppercut left hook is like the most violent version. of like the most violent counter combination that you could throw in this situation. But I mean, admittedly, these moments were few and far between. Largely, Horiguchi was able to get away with his movement. Because he has very quick feet. And like the way he moves around the cage is like very bouncy, and everything is off the bounce. Everything is off these sort of like lunging steps. Almost looks like fencing footwork from a sense, from a certain point of view. Obviously, if any like decent fencer were to look at it, he would say like, "What the fuck is this?" But you get the idea. And so Horiguchi would take these big circles around the cage and reposition, like explode back into range. If he didn't connect, he would do a good job of like knee tapping Pettis, clinching him. But since his footwork is the way it is, he sort of like left this sort of like, there was this, once again, a split second when he was vulnerable. His feet were not in position, and his hands were down a lot of the time. And obviously, when you're at a long range, it's easier to keep it makes perfect sense to keep your hands down. And even when you're in the pocket, if you're good at defensive motions and rolling with your shoulders, you can hold your hands down, but it's just becomes more dangerous, and you actually have to have an enormous degree of skill in the pocket to defend that way. And obviously Horiguchi doesn't have that. And so like slowly over the course of the fight, Pettis was edging away at it, finding his spots. And come the fourth round, he started having way more success with these boxing exchanges. He would prolong and bait Kyoji Horiguchi into these extended exchanges where he would connect with more and more counters, more and more counter combinations. And so Horiguchi was forced to reposition more frantically, more urgently, and with the way his footwork works, it just made the movement more and more sloppier. And not in terms oh, he started just running and turning his back. No. None of that. Just ever so slightly, Horiguchi just started slowing down a little bit. And started taking a couple, maybe a step that wasn't necessary, on occasion. And his movement started becoming a little bit easier to predict. And so at the tail end of that fight, Pettis was really looking to punish Gucci's honestly really exaggerated lateral movement, with wider strikes, and punish that split second when he was vulnerable when exiting the clinch. And so he threw a head kick, obviously missed with it. But what happened is Kyoji Horiguchi, the head kick still slowed down Kyoji Horiguchi because he was forced to duck. He was forced to duck while his feet were bundled together, very close. And when your feet are bundled together, obviously you're in no position to absorb strikes because you're not within your stance. And then Pettis spun through the whiff on the head kick, which loaded up the punch even further, threw this spinning hammer fist, almost like Petr Yan-esque hammer fist with a spin, caught Kyoji out of his stance. Kyoji didn't see the strike, was caught completely unawares, and then he went out. Just perfect connection. It's very similar to the spinning strikes that Petr Yan used against Corey Sandhagen. The difference is Corey Sandhagen has an unbreakable chin, and he was caught a bit more at range, where he could sort of brace himself for a bit before taking the punch. Obviously, one of them dropped him, and also Corey Sandhagen has an immortal chin. Kyoji Horiguchi historically doesn't have an immortal chin. Has been finished multiple times during the course of his career. I'm not saying that Horiguchi has a bad chin. I'm just saying he has a normal chin. It's a decent chin. It's alright. It's an alright chin. He can hang in there with the elites, except that Pettis found this perfect connection. And this perfect connection sparked Horiguchi out. Really, really awesome stuff. As for the rematch, I'm not sure. I don't have an exact read on their abilities and how it's gonna look and how they match up together. But personally, I think Pettis, as the more fundamentally sound of the two, fundamentally sound from a more of a boxing standpoint, where he can dictate these margins, kind of edge away at Horiguchi to set up good connections. I think he can win another messy decision if Horiguchi's chin recovers properly, and if Horiguchi stays more conservative about his entries. Could conceivably win a close back and forth decision. That's my gut feeling. But also, since Pettis has largely figured Horiguchi out, he may as well just dunk on him in these extended exchanges. I don't know. Or he may get sparked by a darting Horiguchi right hand. Who knows? Very interesting matchup, and it's bantamweight. You can't exactly go, oh, now that this guy has his number. At this level, you can't. And this is really isn't just any sort of slight on Horiguchi, because when two elite guys are fighting at this kind of level, the margins are so thin that if you lose concentration, or if you lose a step for even basically the slightest slip, the slightest misstep can lead to you getting flatlined. So, really cool fight, even cooler finish. And it just showcases that fighting is really fucking hard, and fighting is chaotic. No one style of fighting is completely devoid of drawbacks. And Kyoji was exploiting Sergio's flaws and winning, and then Sergio exploited a flaw in Kyoji's game and at the perfect moment and won. That's what fighting is about. Do I think any of them stand any chance against UFC bantamweights? I mean, conceivably they could beat some guys in the top 10 or maybe even top 5, but against guys like Petr Yan and the hero of today's podcast, Jose Aldo, not so sure. Especially not against Yan. TJ, I guess, maybe. Someone like Corey, maybe. But it's a very large maybe. It's a huge maybe. It's a maybe with multiple asterisks after the maybe. Basically, I'm saying no. I mean, I don't know. I haven't thought about these matchups all that much. I'm just saying that if you look at the degree of skill showcased by bantamweights outside the UFC, and then you compare them to bantamweights in the UFC, it's kind of the differences should be pretty self-evident in some of the margins. And I'm gonna say this a lot. Margins, and I generally say this a lot, and I probably never explain what it means. Just basically, it's shorthand for all the small details that fighters showcase in transitional areas, in between striking and wrestling, how they tie everything together, how they tie their wrestling when they're grappling, etc. Or maybe their intangibles, things it's these hard to quantify things like durability, gas tank, and even stuff like will to win. And I'm not saying that bantamweights outside the UFC don't have these margins, or don't exceed some of these margins compared to some of the UFC bantamweights. It's just that the combination of all these factors in the current crop of UFC bantamweights it's too fucking insane to beat with any clear edge in one single area. You have to have everything. But anyway, Uh, Aldo versus Font. Man. I mean, what can you say? Just... Are there really any words? That's why he's the GOAT. That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT! 17 years into his career, clearly past his physical prime, like way past his physical prime. And don't get me started, oh, he's only 33. There's a difference between chronological age and physical age. Your in-fight mileage and the amount of mileage that Jose Aldo has. It pretty much means, like in 5 years, Jose Aldo is pretty much 50 years old. I mean, no two ways about it. At the lighter weights, when you fight as much elite opposition, as many elite fighters as Jose Aldo had, you get broken. It breaks you, the grind. Thai fighters are considered ancient when they hit like 29 years of age, and then they have to spend the rest of their lives working like as fucking cab drivers to make ends meet. And MMA is not any different. All the cardio problems are clearly exacerbated by age and the weight cut, forcing Aldo to compensate by using various wily veteran tricks here and there, and reactions, I mean, almost short at this stage compared to his reactions when he was younger. Can't see 1-2s coming, can't see straight punches coming. Goes ahead, beats a top fiver, like a guy who clearly belongs in the top 5 of the rankings. Beats him comprehensively, just stuns him in every area, knocks him down in every round, and just sits on him. And like, obviously this fight sparked these endless debates, these ever-present GOAT debates, the GOAT talk. And I fucking hate it. I just intensely dislike this type of discourse. It just bores me instantly. I just see no reason to participate in it, really, except to maybe like clarify or myth bust some certain like misconceptions. But the way people use the GOAT talk to further their narratives and one up one another in terms of like their tastes in fighters, so like the way people take their fandom of a certain fighter as and make it a part of their personality. I don't find it interesting. In fact, I find it off-putting. Like sorry, media you enjoy should enhance your life, not define it. And same goes for fighters, same goes for sports and combat sports. But I think at this stage, if I've seen, obviously it's a bit for like an appeal to authority, etc., etc. But biased guys, get the fuck away from my comments and replies. Just fuck off. But I think it's telling when multiple guys on separate occasions that's like several guys that have on several occasions have clearly stated their distaste and disinterest in the GOAT talk, have pointed out that Jose Aldo may have the best argument for being the greatest fighter of all time in MMA. Simultaneously, like obviously I'm counting myself, and then Conor Rubish said it in the aftermath. Jack Slack is a bona fide Jose Aldo is now a GOAT talk. I'm sorry, Jack Slack is now like Jose Aldo is the best guy for like full on, and he used to talk a lot of shit on Jose Aldo for his performances in his prime when he would just coast. He would endlessly, like, constantly make fun of it. And I think it's kind of telling. It may not be a coherent argument, and I admit it, it's not very scientific, but It kind of like it makes you think a little bit. And naturally, I'm not putting myself in the same ballpark as Jack Slack or Connor Rebush. No, God forbid. I'm just way too young. Presumably way too handsome still. Nah. I'm built different. I'm way poorer, and I'm much younger, and I'm at the height of my powers. I'm in my athletic prime, so to speak. But I mean, I realize that I'm not talking about the fight yet, but it's just such a huge and annoying presence whenever Jose Aldo pops up and becomes the subject of discussion. Like, who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT? JSP is the GOAT. No, Fedor is the GOAT. No, John Jones is the GOAT. No, it's Jose Aldo. And everyone like goes at one another and starts like ripping into each other. And it's just everyone loses their minds. It's just everyone loses their sense. And this discussion about the greatest of all time, I guess it has its place in the combat sports Discord. It's just parts of any sporting Discord, but it serves its purpose as a good conversation starter for improving analysis. I think it's a good conversation starter if you want to compare criteria, if you want to figure out what criteria should matter more, if you want to engage in collaborative discussions with your peers and figure out how to evaluate skill, how to evaluate longevity, how to evaluate the various criteria by which you judge fighters, and improve your understanding of those fighters, improve your understanding of their styles, improve your understanding of how different styles work of one another. It's the same thing as a pound for pound list discussion. It's not the end goal is not to settle. The end goal shouldn't be to settle on a clear list of who goes above who. The goal is to gain, for me at least, the goal is to gain a better understanding of the game, a better understanding of what is happening there in the cage, a better understanding of what makes a fighter special. It's kind of like analysis in itself. The goal of good fight analysis is to not like get the outcome correctly. It's to nail down, it's to pin down and figure out the dynamic of the fight, how the fight will look, how it will go, what will be the margins, how the margins play against one another, how the different styles interact with one another to lead to a specific picture of the fight. And the closer you get to the actual reality of how the fight went, the better your analysis becomes. And the better your analysis becomes, and the clearer you're able to picture the dynamic of the future fight, then like through this clear process, you will begin nailing these fight outcomes. You just get better at predicting fights, like as a consequence of a clear, good, and clearly defined and like verified process that you constantly rehash and discuss with your peers. And like everyone talks about how the fight site is a bit of a like the common criticism level that the fighter is that we're like kind of like a hive mind, and fucking come on, man. Just we fight with each other like every other day. We shit talk one another every other day. We rip into each other over our criteria, over our analysis, and it's just peers arguing with one another to get better, to get closer to the truth. It's how you figure out stuff. The reason why we may vaguely agree on certain concepts is because we like spent literal hours arguing with each other to figure out what seems to be the correct answer. If you were to join our Discord and like spend any amount of time in the Discord with our patrons and our staff members, you'd realize that I basically, like me and Sriram, go at it every other day, every week, We shit talk each other. Ryan shit talks everyone, and everyone shit talks Ryan, etc., etc., etc. It's just endless shit talking everywhere. Me and Dan recently got into a huge argument over how the fight between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje actually went. And we both watched that fight dozens of times, so we know what we're talking about. We remember it clearly, and then we rewatched the fight again. And I mean, yeah, we have Jose Aldo as our number one. We've had Jose Aldo as our number one for quite a while now. The first series that the Fight Site ever wrote was the top 20 greatest martial artists, mixed martial artists in history of the sport. And Jose Aldo has been number one for ages now, and the Fight Site founder, Kyle McLachlan, fought tooth and nail to not have Jose Aldo out as on the top of our list. And he's still vehemently against this idea, and it's just very funny. And in the wake of everyone going, oh, now Jose Aldo is clearly the GOAT, he doubled down on it, and he said that GSP coming back and beating a short Michael Bisping is more impressive than Jose Aldo going on a tear through the bantamweight division. It's just just don't get it. What the fuck are you talking about, Kyle? I'm sorry. What? Okay, he won the belt, but valuing the belts so much in MMA, it's basically the same as letting Dana White dictate who the best fighters are. You're just basically agreeing with Dana White, and the reason why everyone at the fight site got assembled was because there's just so many dumb misconceptions about fighting, many of them created by Joe Rogan and Dana White for the clear purpose of selling product. And so when we started doing that, Kyle got extremely mad. Just a really hilarious situation, I think. And I know this comes across as me shit talking the former founder, the founder of the Fight Site, who is a former staff member and decided to go out on his own. All power to him. It's just this fact doesn't prevent me from actually engaging with the person and actually arguing with him on a daily basis. And I think this is the sort of thing that we should have more between different analysts. We should collaborate with one another. Go on each other's shows and shit talk each other to finally settle on a more correct answer, or maybe find some kind of middle ground and find some and improve our understanding of certain of the variables that we're working with. I think that's just would lead to a much healthier discourse overall in combat sports and just better analysis. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I saw what Kyle was posting in the wake of the fight, and told him I said what the fuck are you talking about, man? What is this? Just come on. And he blocked me. Fucking God. And Kyle has had through unblocked for half a year, and then he unblocked him, so I guess I have to wait for half a year and then we can interact again. But anyway, the fight. So, the fight. Rob Font did, Rob Font actually fought the perfect fight for his attributes. He fought his heart out. He fought to his strengths, didn't do anything stupid. Clearly knew what he had to do. Just stay in Aldo's face and pour on volume, try to gas him out, give him fits with the jab, and he did give Aldo fits with the jab. Aldo came in prepared to cross counter the jab, and Font would constantly play with the rhythm, play with the he would play with the rhythm and speed and range of his jab. and he jabbed Aldo up. Jabbed Aldo up, made him miss with a cross counter, connected with counters of his own. There were separate occasions where he would draw the cross counter, slip the cross counter, and then like punish the cross counter with a body shot. It was gorgeous. Excellent, like very good fundamental boxing. He would like win these exchanges. He would win exchanges and make Aldo work and make Aldo exert himself constantly by trying to roll with these punches and defend them. And admittedly, Aldo has done a very good job of defending most of those punches. But he couldn't defend the jab, and he couldn't defend the body shots. And it was very alarming because, as we all know Aldo's cardio issues. Even though after this fight, it might seem like it's overstated, but then again, Aldo had to lay in prayer for large stretches of the fight to sort of like get his bearings back. But anyway, on the feet, Aldo would jab Aldo, Font would jab Aldo up, connect to the body, and then at certain moments, Aldo would find a spot where he would set up a combination. It would be a 1-2 or maybe a 3-2, like these simple 2-punch counter combinations, and he would just send Font reeling. He would put Font on ice skates and send him like stumbling all over the octagon. He would every round when Font was just about to get ahead, Aldo would make him do the chicken dance. So he would rock Font's world each time, and then Font would have to go back, like try to recover and go, fucking hell, and he's back to square one. And he has to do all this work to get back into the fight. It's enormously discouraging. It's just incredibly mentally taxing. And it sort of like put Aldo and Font on even ground in terms of cardio, and also Aldo was clearly the much stronger fighter of the two, with a much more filled out frame, and smothering on top, absolutely smothering on top, and Aldo would knock Font down and then sort of like grapevine him and just turn into like this. Almost turn himself into like a parasite that clings to Font and doesn't let go for the rest of the round. And obviously, like one of the criticisms you could level against Aldo was that it's just lay and praying. You can't give him any props for just stalling out the rest of the fight. But like honestly, the way he controlled Font on the ground is kind of impressive. Constantly adjusting his position, constantly constantly regaining deep half, constantly regaining mount, constantly and Font was doing a really great job of retaining his guard, but then Aldo would just slice through it and then go to he would like tripod pass, he would smash pass, and he would go to side control, then he would go mount, then he would go deep half again. Really, really great control, but the one criticism you could level against Aldo is that if he let loose with ground and pound, he might have finished Font on several occasions, but he just didn't do it. And I mean, that's just vintage Aldo. Aldo is just not that good of a finisher. he would just rock Font and then throw like a flying knee for no reason. Admittedly, those flying knees connected, but they didn't like connect like flush to put Font like flat on his face. But anyway, and he didn't kick for the first round until Pederneiras actually like yelled at him to finally like start kicking. And yeah, early on Font was giving like switching stances a lot, giving off different looks, so maybe that given Aldo some pause. But then again, you can very easily kick people in the legs while they're switching stances. It's not anything like, it's not too difficult, and Aldo certainly could manage that. But anyway, Aldo went back to leg kicking, started leg kicking, started like punting Font's leg from under him. He went to the body, but then again, like the way Aldo punches, he is obviously a gigantic puncher, and his mechanics when he's punching to the head have much improved. He's no longer swinging these gigantic badunkadunks. He no longer throws these Marge Simpson uppercuts, but he still throws the Marge Simpson uppercuts when he's throwing to the body. So one has to wonder if these body punches exhaust him just as much as they exhaust the other party. But anyway, kept knocking Font down and just sat on him for the rest of the fight. Clear, almost essentially basically like a 50-40, 50-45, or maybe a 50-46 for Aldo. Just easy. And who does that? Just who does that at this age? 17 years deep into your career, after multiple grueling, immensely violent fights against top opposition, after getting sparked, pick yourself back up, go on a tear through the division again, lose again, move down in weight after a history of horrific weight cuts, draining yourself like to the point where Aldo looked like a fucking, basically like a living corpse in the weigh-ins. Go down in weight, have a competitive fight with one of the title challengers, lose in horrific, first of all, have an extremely competitive fight for the first 3 rounds against one of the pound for pound best fighters ever in the sport, get 10 shits kicked out of you due to like the ref's negligence, go back, win again and again in 3 rounders, where, okay, you could leverage your power and size and skill to kind of like, well, in the first fight he stalled out Chito Vera on top after dominating like the first 1.5 rounds on the feet, and then against Pedro Munhoz he boxed him up, boxed Pedro Munhoz's face off for 3 rounds. Okay, that's 3 rounds, and now a 5-rounder against a top 5er. A fighter who is clearly very durable in his own right, knock him down in every round, and then just not let him get back up again until the final bell sounded. Who does that? And this run through the best division in the sport, against the best fighters in the world, after like 40 fights. After like 35 fights, Jose Aldo now he's fought 38 fights. He's 31-7. 31 wins. Fyodor Emelianenko is 40-6. Largely against like these like huge overweight lumps of flesh in one of the worst divisions in the sport. And I fucking love Further, but I mean, their resumes are just not comparable. Come on. I mean, obviously, Joe St. Pierre, he still has a really great argument, like for still remaining the greatest champion in MMA ever, and the greatest fighter. But well, I mean, going back to beat a Michael Bisping, a one-eyed Michael Bisping who went life and death with a geriatric, like Dan Henderson, a fucking Triassic era Henderson. And like, it's extremely impressive that Georges St. Pierre took all this time off to address all the issues that he's had against Johnny Hendricks. A fight that many would agree that he lost. It's a firmly held belief amongst many fight fans. And then come back and like showcase that he's much improved against an opponent at a new weight class. But I mean, it's not like he was fighting Robert Whittaker. He wasn't fighting Yoel Romero. And everyone knew back then that the real champion, the one who really deserved all the praise and accolades as the real champion, was Robert Whittaker back then. Like, compare Michael Bisping versus Dan Henderson and Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero. Just, you can't compare them. It should be self-evident who the better fighters are. Because this is what Jose Aldo essentially did. He kept fighting elite opposition throughout. And after having a dominant title reign, a title reign that is clearly about as comparable to GSP's title reign, picked himself up after a horrific loss, again fought against some of the greatest fighters the sport has ever seen, went on a tear through contenders, again started fighting some of the best fighters ever, and now he continues through this tear of the top 5 and the most competitive divisions in the sport. The most competitive division in the sport. If you don't want to put him on your GOAT list for whatever arbitrary reason that you could cook up, I mean personally, like, I don't have a greatest of all time list, like, myself, but the way I saw all these greatest of all time discussions go, usually it kind of, to me, it seems like it's like the scene from American Psycho, the Paul Allen card scene. Like Christian Bale takes out his card and like shows it, and it's like number 1, like I don't know, fucking number 1 Fyodor Emelianenko, number 2 like GSP, number 3 I don't know, fucking Anderson Silva, and then Jose Aldo, etc., etc. And everyone goes, yeah, that's nice. And like, take a look at mine, and then and it's GSP, Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, Khabib, someone else, and everyone goes, yeah. And then some other guy like goes like, I have GSP on top, and everyone goes, yeah. Like very nice, and then obviously no one goes very nice in response to these cards. They actually start fighting right away, but for the sake of the joke, someone goes, let's see Paul Allen's card, and then Paul Allen takes out his card, and then he has Conor McGregor on top. And he's like, and it's like, oh my god, oh, the hotness of the steak. Because this is what happens usually. Like, someone would have like an atrocious GOAT list, and then some other person would have a slightly less atrocious GOAT list. Some person would have like a slightly agreeable GOAT list, and then the fight side came up with a GOAT list because we actually like rehashed our criteria. Like, we actually came up with clear criteria and spelled them out in every article that was ever written, and discussed them at length before, ripped into each other for having like sort of like views against specific fighters, argued for days on end, and then came up with a list that is going to be adjusted in the future anyway. And then other people saw it and figured, oh, this is such a hipster list. I'm not gonna listen to these hipsters, and like decided to become anti-hipsters. But the problem is, when you become an anti-hipster, what you do is you just circle back around to having normal opinions. I'm gonna have casual opinions just in response to hipster opinions. Like, what is this? Like, why? You know what? I'm probably the one staff member that cares the least about these discussions, but I figure we might as well come up with something different to call these discussions, these lists, these top tens, and you might call it. I propose a cow list. Jose Aldo is the cow. He's number one, pound for pound, in my cow list, in my coolest of the world list. Why a cow? Because a cow is larger than a goat. That's how I picked it. It's just a list of fighters I really like. No clear criteria, I just like them. Number 1, Jose Aldo. Number 2, Steve Garcia. Why Steve Garcia? Because he dominated Luis Pena while hanging out in a backpack ride and throwing overcuts. Throwing these strikes that I like to call overcuts. He would like loop his fists around to hit Luis Pena in the face while still in this body triangle on the ground. Number 3, Francis Ngannou, because he's large and can punch. Number 4, Yuri Prohaska, because he has a funny hairdo. And on the list goes on. Jose Aldo is the cow. He's a cow. He's even larger than a cow. He's a water buffalo. He's a water buffalo, and I rotate him in my mind, and I ponder him like a sphere. Just doing everything in their power to make sure this podcast doesn't ages horribly by putting in references to Twitter memes. Alright. Bit of a shambolic episode, isn't it? And I wasn't sure if I actually want to record anything this week, but I have to, because it's my job. And I had to provide some actual analysis on the fights, because the MMA podcast is currently on hiatus. Hiatus? I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that word. Hang on.
Hiatus.
So yeah, hiatus. The Fight Sites MMA podcast is on a bit of a hiatus, so I have to stand in and provide weekly breakdowns. I'm sure... oh, by the way, Sriram, I think, mentioned to me that he's going to write post-fight breakdown, so stay tuned for that. So stay tuned for a written article on Font versus Aldo. Not sure about any breakdowns on Horiguchi versus Pettis, but I would recommend, however, that you go back and check out the preview for Horiguchi vs. Pettis that is done by Fenyo, and it is up on our on the Fight Side Presents YouTube channel. And the reason why I'm asking you to go back and watch the preview, because it pretty much gets the whole dynamic correctly, which is interesting. It's always interesting to go back and listen to some of the predictions. I think it held up very well. And what else? Oh yeah, we have Oliveira Chakiolov versus Dustin Poirier this week is this week. So I think we're gonna do a round table, or maybe like Fenyo and Dan will band together to do a full preview of that pay-per-view. So certainly stay tuned for that. Not sure about the staff picks. I think Sriram is going to be writing the staff picks, and someone else will hop in to write their predictions. We've been pretty horrible with our staff picks predictions, written staff picks lately, because we're much too lazy to actually write stuff down. Everything is much easier when you can just spell it out in the podcast. Yeah, otherwise, that's pretty much it. And yeah, check out the Fight Site on Patreon, support us if you would like. I've been the alternate commentary for all the fights are up there on Patreon for $3 per month. I've also been recording alternate commentary for various random fights. Me and Fenyu have done multiple fight watch marathons. We would pick a division and then and then watch 3 rounders from that division. The cool, forgotten, maybe underrated, or maybe just old 3 rounders from the division. Like just watching cool fights. Certainly check it out. And I'm working on an instructional That has to do with boxing fundamentals, where I explain stuff like stance, moving within stance, securing positioning, and proper punching mechanics, that kind of stuff. And it's going to be released on Patreon as well. Not sure about the price yet, but I don't think we should. I don't think I'm going to be. I'm gonna sell it for fairly cheap, and so I think I'm gonna release it along with everything else. So maybe if you subscribe at the $3, it'll be there alongside all the alternate commentary and the breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. Also, $5 per month, and you may join our Discord and watch us talk shit with one another, and converse with other like-minded fight fans. We're trying to facilitate a creation of like a community where everyone can actually like civilly discuss fighting and improve their knowledge through actual like more or less kind of sort of scientific way, and or at least more reasonable way than it is than you can currently see on Twitter and other social media and Reddit and that kind of stuff. So if you're tired of all the goat talk, if you're tired of all the dumb arguments going on online, join our Discord. It's $5 per month, gives you access to all our content. It's a steal. Also a very supportive community. If you want tips, if you want training tips, if you want to discuss, if you just want general life advice, if you want to find friends, just that's the place for you. We're a very accepting community, and even if you think that you're shite at fighting, even if you think you suck, you're training. It's training. Just it's normal for you to look kind of subpar in training. That's why you're training, to become better. If you want tips, just you know the place to look. All right. I think that's enough of that. I've plugged everything that I could plug, and I guess I'll see you next week. Moo.